Dungeons & Dragons is the most well-known of RPGs in the United States, and it has a long legacy besides just being an RPG. There are several novels set in its settings, like Dragonlance or The Forgotten Realms, and there's also video game tie-ins like Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights. If you want to talk about board games, you even got the Lords of Waterdeep. And it's not like this is a new development either, because as far back as the 1980s, you had NES video games that were based on Dungeons & Dragons, such as Dragon Strike or Heroes of the Lance. So, with all that said, what sort of game could possibly rival Dungeons & Dragons in that regard? Yes, Shadowrun. While Shadowrun hasn't enjoyed as much mainstream popularity in the United States as Dungeons & Dragons, it still boasts having accomplished much. For starters, there's both a Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo Shadowrun game, as well as a more modern series of computer games. What's more surprising to me, though, is the international popularity of Shadowrun. I've seen a lot of Steam Workshop content for Shadowrun Returns available in numerous languages, including Spanish and German. In addition to that, Shadowrun 4th Edition was pretty wildly popular in Japan. And if we want to talk about other tabletop games, there's also Shadowrun Crossfire, the cooperative deck-building game. So basically, whether you're aware of it or not, Shadowrun is a big deal. And with all that said, I've decided I'm going to show you how to play Shadowrun 5th Edition. Shadowrun follows a fairly simple method of conflict resolution. You gather up a pool of 6-sided dice based on one of your attributes and skills, and you roll. Every 5 or 6 counts as a hit, and you're looking to have as many hits as a particular threshold. If your meter beat the threshold, your character succeeds. You also need to keep an eye on how many 1s show up. If half the dice you roll show 1, then your character has what's called a glitch. Glitches are when something unfortunate, but not necessarily fatal or catastrophic happens. Dropping a weapon or tool, tripping while running, or briefly floundering while swimming are examples of glitches. It's possible to succeed and glitch at the same time, so it's important to note that they don't necessarily negate one another. As an example, you could succeed at fixing someone's electronic device, but wind up using the last of your solder when you glitch. With the GM's permission, you can also buy hits, which is basically dividing your dice pool by 4 and rounding any remainders down. So 9 dice would let you buy 2 hits and you can forgo rolling entirely. But if your GM says you can't buy hits for some reason, you cannot buy hits. Deal with it. The final thing to keep in mind with Shadowrun's dice system is limits. Limits are what they sound like. They're a cap on how many hits you can get on a roll. There's 2 places you can get your limits from: your character's inherent limits, physical, mental, and social, or the limits from their equipment. Because you can only be so accurate with a crappy gun, and you can only get so lucky by guessing. Shadowrun 5th Edition refers to any incident where your character rolls as tests. There's 2 basic notations for tests. This one is for normal, you need to do this thing and it doesn't take more than a moment actions, like quickly and quietly sneaking past somebody. Then there's this one for much longer tasks, like trying to fix your car after somebody emptied a 50-round magazine from a submachine gun into it. The second kind of test uses higher thresholds, since each roll adds up till it reaches the threshold, with each roll representing a certain amount of time spent performing the task. This is pretty much the basis of all conflict resolution in Shadowrun. If you're familiar with World of Darkness, especially the old settings like Vampire the Masquerade, you'll feel right at home in Shadowrun. However, character creation is where things can get a little challenging. Take a look at this chart. If you can't read it on the screen here, it's on page 65 in the core rulebook. Character creation goes by this chart. You have 5 different aspects of your character to decide upon: metatype, number of attribute points, their magical ability, their skill points, and how much money they have for equipment. You also have 5 levels of priority, the letters A through E. You assign one of those letters to each of the 5 aspects of your character, and that determines what you get for that aspect. So if you decide you want a lot of money for equipment, choose priority A for that, and you'll get nearly 500,000 new yen. Though if you also want a lot of attributes, your only options then are the letters B, C, D, and E. You've already used A for the resources column. To get all those attribute points, you'll have to either choose a lower priority letter for resources, or just suck it up and go with the next best thing. There's a few of these priorities that might need a little more explaining though. The meta type column is basically what race you want your character to be. Lower priorities for this give you less options for your race. And the number in parentheses next to a particular meta type is how many points you get to spend in the special attributes, magic, resonance, and edge. If you don't want to be a magician, adept, or technomancer, or you're not going to pick a low priority for the magic column, you can pretty safely pick one of the meta types with a low number next to it. However, edge is something any character can benefit from, and there's a list of things you can do with that on page 56. Another example, if you want to play an orc, you need to at least prioritize letter C for meta type, and even then you'll get no points to add to your special attributes. Not that that's a problem though, since you can easily just put priority A or B into the magic or resonance column, giving you a maxed out rating of 6 for priority A, or a fairly high 4 for priority B. Those priorities give you that, in addition to the various spells and skills pertaining to what you choose. If you decide you want magic, you'll need to pick at least priority D, and you also need to pick one of the types of mages available to that priority. I'll talk more in detail about magic characters later, but it comes down to this. You're either some kind of magician or adept with a magic rating, or a technomancer that uses resonance. You cannot be both. Finally, skills. There's two numbers there. The first is how many points you have for individual skills, and the second is for skill groups. I'll explain more about how that works in a moment, but all you need to know for now is that the first number is for individual skills, and the second is for raising multiple related skills at once. I want to take just a moment to point out something you've no doubt already noticed, and what probably led you to looking up this video in the first place. There is a lot of intricacies and a lot of bookkeeping in this game, and there's no easy way to keep track of it all. Shadowrun is very much in its 5th edition what it was back in the 80s and 90s. A game where you have to keep track of a lot of different things and refer to a lot of different charts. The rulebook suggests using spreadsheets and scratch paper to keep track of all this. I've got a better idea though, and it's called Chummer. Chummer 5A. Basically, Chummer 5A is a freeware character creator software for Shadowrun 5th edition. It handles all the bookkeeping and calculations for you, so you can much more quickly make your character. It does not include any of the rulings for what certain things do though, so you'll still need to read your copy of the rulebook if you're not sure how something works. What Chummer 5A does do though, is tell you which book and on which page you need to look for the information. It can even export a character sheet file for you in various file and arrangement formats, so if your group has a rule against laptops at the game table, you can just as easily use computers only for character creation. But I digress. Most tests in Shadowrun 5th edition are based on an attribute, a skill, and some sort of limit. There's a small amount of limits, and they're all pretty self-explanatory. The same cannot be said of attributes though, and there's a great many things that they factor into. So, from the top, we have body, which factors into your physical damage track and how much damage you can resist. Agility factors into your attack accuracy. Reaction factors into your initiative and avoiding being hit. Strength is melee damage. Willpower is your spell drain, stun damage track, and your defense bonus when you go full defense. Logic is used for resisting hermetic spell drain. Intuition is used for initiative and avoiding being hit. And charisma is used for resisting shamanic spell drain. All that in addition to the various skills that they govern as well. The default human starting level for all stats is 1, with the highest any can go being 6. Choosing a different meta type changes your starting stats as well as what your maximums are. Furthermore, during character creation, only one of your stats can be at their maximum. So as tempting as it may be to cap out your defense with 6 in both reflexes and intuition for a human, the rules simply won't let you do that. Skills are the other half of any test, and the list of them is too long for me to accurately and concisely describe them all. I can tell you, though, that they're broken up into 3 groups: active, knowledge, and language. Active skills represent things your character can physically do. Knowledge skills are things that your character knows, and language skills measure fluency in, well, languages. The points you get for skills and skill groups during character creation are used for active skills. During character creation, None of your skills or their groups can go above 6. If you're the sort of player that only picks skills that match up with their attributes, page 151 has a list of what skills correlate with what attribute. And if you wind up without enough points to get all the skills that you want, you're not completely out of luck. Some skills can be used without training, just at a -1 dice penalty. That same list on page 151 denotes the ones that you must have at least 1 point in, with italics. Skill groups are a set of 3 related skills, such as automatics, rifles, and pistols in the firearms group, or counterspelling, ritual casting, and spellcasting under the sorcery group. The skills in a skill group are treated as one. Raising the group rating improves your ability with all 3. One thing you cannot do during character creation, however, is combine points for individual skills and skill groups. You can't spend your 5 points for skill groups to get 5 in melee combat, and then spend a point from individual skills to increase blades up to 6, leaving unarmed and clubs at 5. During character creation, skill groups are all or nothing. Somewhere around skills and attributes, characters with magic or resonance should get their powers, spells, complex forms, and anything else that their archetype grants them. For now though, gear. Among the various people I've discussed Shadowrun with, choosing gear is quite possibly the most daunting task in Shadowrun. Besides all the diagrams and charts, the giant reliance on gear is what makes this game such a throwback to the 1980s. Modern game design generally assumes that you, the player, are more interested in your player's adventures than knowing how many scented candles they carry around with them, and thus goes by the simple rule of, you probably have it. Inventory is part and parcel to Shadowrun though. Money is scarce, and every bullet you have has to count. There's also a lot of ways your equipment can be tricked out, and each modification to your gear makes it just a little bit more costly. Remember earlier how I mentioned that this game has a lot of bookkeeping? Well, this is where it mostly comes up, and Chumber 5A will be your best friend at this point for sure. There's a few things to keep in mind when choosing your character's equipment, and by a few, I mean a lot. First, during character creation, you're not allowed to have anything higher than a rating of 6 or an availability of 12. Second, your character's money acquired during character creation must be primarily spent on equipment. You're only allowed to keep 5,000 new yen after character creation. Third, cyberware for your character cannot give you a bonus of more than 4 to your attributes. This is a rule that applies even after character creation. Finally, if you're not sure what sort of items your character needs, there's a handy checklist on page 94, also reproduced here for the lazy. Again, there's a lot of equipment, and I can't concisely go over it all, but the ones that are definitely important are a fake sin along with fake licenses, if only for story purposes. Without those, your character is not only the equivalent of an illegal alien in their country of residence, but they're also undocumented, and probably also carrying a lot of illegal items. Shadowrun is a cyberpunk setting, a dystopia where corporations rule everything, and everything is restricted and regulated to hell and back, perhaps unnecessarily. Simply hand-waving away that a character would be smart enough to have those things, as well as plenty of ammo at all times, kills the tension of the setting. Not to mention, the amount of new yen for gear that you have is one of the aspects you prioritize during character creation. Giving anything and everything a player character might need or want cheapens this aspect of the character creation process. Now, if you've already read the rulebook, you probably noticed I did the steps of character creation in a different order. Normally, after choosing metatype and if your character has magic or resonance, you'd move on to qualities. Qualities are a grab bag of various different effects, good and bad, that you can take for your character. I saved these for last because of the scope of everything qualities can affect. That, and it ties in with the absolute final step of the process, spending leftover karma. Basically, you start with 25 karma, and you can spend this on positive qualities, or to improve other aspects of your character, or just to hang on to for later. Additionally, you can also take negative qualities to gain more karma. No matter how you decide to go about using qualities and karma though, there's 2 rules to keep in mind during this character creation step. You're not allowed to have more than 25 karma worth of positive qualities, and you're not allowed to have more than 25 karma worth of negative qualities. After you have all the qualities you want for your character, you can spend your karma to improve other aspects of your character according to the guidelines starting on page 103. A reference chart is on page 107 that details the karma costs for various character improvements. After all this has been said and done, you just need to go over a few final calculations that are listed on page 101, and you're done. Though if you are using Chummer 5a like I've suggested twice in this video so far, all this has already been taken care of for you. So there you have it. Those are the basic rules for Shadowrun 5th edition. This isn't a game for the faint of heart, but when you consider everything that Dungeons & Dragons entails, neither is that. But that's somehow the entry point to RPGs. So, with all that said, I am Aaron der Schädel, and I'll see you all in the shadows, chummer. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, click the like button and let the whole internet know you thought so. Remember, internet videos and computer programs are no replacement for actually reading the source material yourself. This applies to both RPGs and just about any other subject. Unless, of course, the source material is a computer program or an internet video. Then, well, carry on as you were.